what seems to be happening is the virus is changing. It must have been several weeks ago. It went into someone that was immunosuppressed, maybe with HIV, probably in Botswana, because that's where the first case was found, probably in the beginning of November, a long time ago in virus terms. And it found a way that it could mutate drastically and then learn to live with its host. The reason we think the patient was immunosuppressed is it allowed it to experiment with the patient. And the viruses want to have peace with us. Any parasite doesn't want to kill the host, because if it does that, it does itself out of a job. It doesn't have it can't replicate. So the virus wants to be friendly to us. And maybe that's what Omicron is all about. It's not a serious illness in South Africa. Sure, the cases are going up in South Africa, but that's with the Delta variant, not with Omicron. And as we've heard time and time again over the last 3 days, one of the leading doctors in South Africa says there's not a single case hospitalized with Omicron, which is really good news for us. It's the way evolution is working for this virus to try and allow it to live with the host, which is us. Now, what's amazing about the hype from the media, from governments, from politicians, is that there's no way you can stop spreading it, because it happened 3 weeks ago. Closing Heathrow, closing borders doesn't do anything. The virus is already everywhere. We have to just accept that. Putting masks on public transport makes no difference. The virus is there. We have to learn to live with it and not panic. And that's what's happening now. And it'll calm down. And we've already heard from the US and from some of the people in government that maybe this will come to an end in the next 2 weeks. But what they've done, and what is unforgivable, they've instilled fear that will stop cancer patients, stroke patients, heart attack patients seeking medical aid.
Absolutely. I completely agree, Karol. I completely agree, because actually that is the real crisis facing our health system. And Carl Hennigan, the professor of evidence-based medicine from Oxford University, who was on earlier in the show, completely agreed with that. And Karol, what annoys me is that when Sajid Javid took over from Matt Hancock as health secretary, he said all of the right things. He said all of the right things. You know, we're going to start to learn to live with this virus. We're not going to panic. We know that we can never lock down again. Now that he's in the job, it feels like he loves having this control over us. Is it that, Karol, or is it just that as soon as you get in a position of responsibility like that, you panic?
I think that's it. It's just panic, Dan. What we've seen is that politicians try to capitalize. The last piece you just showed on your show about Nicola Sturgeon, that's just capitalizing on a problem that we've got. So how can we get out of this? I think the way forward, sure, we have to monitor it. We have to stop politicians taking knee-jerk reactions. And we've already got the guys in Wales, the guys in Scotland, insisting on masks throughout the summer when we've stopped. So we've got to have a national strategy for this rather than a regional strategy.
And by the way, Karol, despite having these mask mandates, their COVID rates were actually higher than us, so it doesn't work.
Exactly. It's pointless. And we kid ourselves if we can really control this virus by mechanisms. We've got to let the virus find a way to learn to live with us, and we've got to learn to live with the virus. That's what it wants.
And Karol, it's the human cost of some of these decisions as well. So if you look at the border closures, for example, I know folk from South Africa who live in the UK who have had family reunions, long-awaited family reunions of nearly 2 years scuppered because of this decision. So what are we doing? We're punishing the South Africans because they use their scientific nous to actually work out that this variant existed. So that feels completely unfair to me. And now we see travel businesses almost made the sacrificial lamb by the government because, Karol, loads of people I know are cancelling trips today, worried about not going overseas because of these ridiculous rules that mean that the moment you return, you have to stay in your house for 2 days until you return a negative PCR test. And for a lot of people, Karol, especially if you're a family, the PCR tests, which are a massive rip-off are just too expensive.
Yeah, they often cost more than the flight. If you go on a budget airline, they're definitely more than the flight. And I think the problem is it become a mindset of fear. It just increases the fear about the virus. We have to learn to live with it, not test for it, look for it everywhere. It's not going to help. And, I just think we're going to lose more people through the fear that it causes for them not seeking proper medical aid than we are going to from the virus. For most people, this is a very minor illness. I've had it. My wife's had it. She ran a marathon with it without knowing and tested the next day positive.
Wow.
And I can't run marathons anymore.
You've got a very fit wife, clearly.
Exactly. She's quite old, like me, but she's quite fit. And, on the whole, it's not a serious illness. Now, sure, people die from it. People die from the flu, they die from the cold.
I completely agree. And this government needs to start practicing what it preaches, because terrifying us all with a 5 p.m. press conference on a Saturday night when we're all just trying to live our life is actually causing real mental health trauma for the country, Karol.
It is, absolutely. Panic is not the way forward. We've got to hang back. And Fauci in the US, the chief medical officer equivalent there, said this. He said, look, we don't know enough about it. That's a fair statement. We will know in the next 10 days to 14 days, and we shouldn't panic. But here, it is like panic everywhere. The notices are up there. Don't come in here without a face mask. Don't do this, do that, so on and so on. We have no evidence that we need to change the whole approach to dealing with COVID.